Let's Vamonos.
Hi, I'm Joanna Lopez with Texas Premium Financial Services. I want to take this time to say thank you to all of our clients for making this spring such a success. I'm honored you chose us to help you with your business. And now, if you didn't know, we provide a range of services to meet the needs of businesses of all sizes, from small sole proprietorships to larger enterprises, one of them being bookkeeping services. Our team of certified bookkeepers will provide you with accurate and up-to-date financial records. We ensure that information is correctly categorized, stored, and interpreted in order to provide you with the decision-making insights you need. You can contact us at 832-990-0403.
Hello, hello. We are live. This is Let's Vamonos Live. I'm your host, Desiree, and happy Memorial Day. Thank you so much to our veterans out there for today. We really appreciate and want to honor them today as well. But we are going to be joined by a wonderful guest, Monet Hurst Mendoza, who is the playwright of the play that I saw about 2.5 weeks ago at the Alley Theater called Torera. And I'm super excited because we're going to have a great conversation today, and we look forward to interacting with some fellow supporters as well. So if you're watching this, thank you so much for supporting us. But we're going to go ahead and bring in our wonderful guest. Let's bring her in. Hi.
Hi, Desiree.
Thank you so much, Monet, for joining us today. I know it's Memorial Day, and obviously we did have some technical difficulties yesterday, but no worries. We're on it. I always say for me, I'm a Mexican, not a Mexican.
Yes, exactly.
And so we are going to make sure we make things happen. So thank you again for joining, for being a part of the conversation today. We definitely want to highlight and uplift this conversation because it's about our community, it's about our voices, and it's about our stories, and you're a part of that. And so thank you so much again for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm super jazzed to be here and talking about the show. I think this platform that you have is just a really amazing thing. So happy to support, happy to talk about my work, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, and thank you. Yes, for sure. We did get a chance to meet at the theater. It was the opening show, and I was just so overwhelmed by the show. I literally was barely able to get words out. As you know, I was there. I was trying to express my feelings, but there was just so much to process. And but I was very grateful for your grace and for your time to let me just kind of boo.
Oh my gosh, no, this, I love when people have visceral reactions like that, whether it's positive or negative, because I think that means it affected something within you. If you're so moved to tears, that's a wonderful thing. Also, if you're storming out of the theater because you're like, I hate what I saw, I'm into that as well. Obviously, what I did made you angry enough to leave.
Yeah.
So, I think all emotions are valid in the theater, and they're all positive. And I wrote this play for our community, and so to have a member of our community come up to me and say, I've been so affected. That would look like my mother. That looked like my father. That's a relationship that I have, with my sibling. That to me, there is no greater joy. There is no greater joy. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I had told you, even those chairs that they used on set were literally the chair. I swear they were the chairs that my grandmother had. It was very wow, this was, it was just so real. I definitely felt like I could totally relate to even the smallest things, right? Something so small like that. But yeah, it was a really amazing experience. And again, I want to thank the Alley Theater for inviting me. And for those that don't know, the show will be going on till June 4th. So you have time to watch it. Go to alleytheater.org to purchase some tickets, find some time so you can go and watch it. It is a world premiere. So this is to me, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to watch this amazing play about Latinos. But one of the things that I really was just super curious about, because this is a story that I had not really known about, bullfighting in general, or also women in bullfighting. But how did you come about like starting to write this particular play?
Yeah, so at the time that I started working on it, which was in 2017 at this point, I was working at Samuel French, which is a play licensing company here in New York City. Now it's under Concord Theatricals, but at the time it was just Samuel French. And so I used to work in the licensing department and did a lot of front-facing customer service with educators around and small theaters around the globe. And so during the day, in between phone calls and while I was doing, all my mountains of paperwork, I would be listening to the radio or a podcast on my headphones. And one day, I guess I happened to be listening to NPR, and they did a story about female bullfighter, a female bullfighter named Lupita Lopez, who is actually from Merida, Yucatan, which is where my dad's side of the family is from. And two things kind of caught my ears and like made me perk up. It was like, first was like female bullfighters. I was like, I grew up going to bullfights when I would go to Mexico with my grandparents. I'd never heard of a female bullfighter before. I'd seen like little children do it, with like the little calf, but I'd never seen a woman do it before. So that I thought was really interesting. That was perk number one. And then perk of the ears number two was Merida, Yucatan, which is, it is the capital of Yucatan. But, whenever I would talk about it as a child, like, oh, I'm going to Merida this summer with my grandparents, or I'm going to Merida for Christmas with my grandparents, everyone was like, where is that? It's just like, it's the tip of the peninsula. And when people think of that area of Yucatan, they really actually think of like Cancun or, Tulum now, which is Quintana Roo, which is, kitty corner. It's just the state next door. Yeah. So there was this feeling in me that was like, wow, somebody has to tell this story. Why not me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the time I had also been working on, I have a goal over the course of my life, which I hope is very long, knock on wood, to work on a play cycle about working class women in Yucatan, in different parts of Yucatan. And so I was like, oh, maybe this will be like the Merida story that I tell, because it takes place in many locations in Mexico, but the main locale is a hacienda that's outside of Merida, Yucatan. So that's kind of how I started. And at the same time, I was in the running to be part of the Emerging Writers Group at the Public Theater. Out of 440 people who submitted their work, I was one of a handful of finalists that were gathered and interviewed for the final selection. And, when
awesome.
I think about it now, it's like, I'm like, oh, it was 440 because that's, that's what the press release says. But when I actually think about 440 people, it is kind of amazing. And it's a great feat to be considered for such a prestigious institution in New York. But I was in this interview process, and one of the questions that they asked was, what is the show that you want to work on while you're here in residence for 2 years? Like, what is the play you want to write? And I don't know what happened. Usually I am so much better at like prepping myself for an interview. And I just didn't think that they would ask that question. I don't know why, but I had this like moment of like, oh my God, panic. And then I remembered that I had heard this article or I had heard this story. And I kind of pitched it to them. I was like, I want to write a play about bullfighters, female bullfighters in Mexico, proud to be in Mexico. Because I think a lot of the immigration stories that we hear or plays, that our community writes, and again, there's nothing wrong with these plays, but they're always about, coming from Mexico for a better life in the U.S. And that's some people's story, but that's not everybody's story. And I was kind of fascinated by the idea of being like, no, these people are like, they're proud to live where they live and they love where they live. And that's a beautiful thing also. So I kind of pitched it that way, and I didn't really have like all of the characters or anything like that, but I had some like building blocks, and I guess they liked it enough that they let me in the group. And then I spent 2 years working on it. And then, you know, it got produced here at the Alley, you know, almost 7 years later at this point.
Yeah.
God, it feels like a lifetime ago when I started writing this
When you
play.
started it. What I love
Yeah.
about that story is the fact that it was something that was on the fly. And sometimes, as we know, I know for myself that when the more we do the work, do the research, do the planning, it can sometimes be like not as, I guess at the end result's not always what we want, but sometimes when we do our best work sometimes can come from off the cuff.
Yeah.
And
The initial
I'm
spark.
yeah, and it's just because it's a challenge. I think for myself, there's a lot of times where I've done things like, okay, let me just try this, you know, or let me, somebody wants to do an interview really quick. Okay, let me go do that really quick, you know, and even though it might not be planned. And so I appreciate that you shared that, because sometimes we get into our head sometimes too much as Latinas, and
Oh, yeah.
we have to understand that yes, planning is important, obviously, but it's not always going to be the only way, the only pathway. And I also wanted to share the fact that you said you realized that it was a feat, right? That you were 400 and something. There was 400 and something other people that were in that line with you. As Latinas, we need to toot our horns. We need to tell people the feats that we have made to so people know, and so we don't be so humble all the time and feel so like we have to make ourselves feel so small for our community, when we really should be just as proud, because believe me, everybody else out there is very proud and shares.
Yes, yes, they do.
Yes. I just wanted to mention, I do see some wonderful people on joining us through Instagram. So thank y'all so much for joining us. I did see Jackie, the Elena, she was on. She just said a little heart face. And also a wonderful, my hairdresser who does my hair. Her name's Emily. She said hello as well. So
it looks good, Emily.
Yes, thank you. She's the one that takes care of my hair. And right now, she has been such a blessing to me. But I just, that's just awesome. The beginnings of that. And you took, you know, like you said, 7 years, right?
Yeah, 7 years from, I think, from the genesis of the idea to the production. Yeah, and Jackie's been with it since the beginning. Like, I wrote this play for Jackie, which is why she's so incredible in it. Yeah, yes. We always joke around that, like, she's my muse, but she truly is my muse.
That's
like,
awesome.
I put everything. Everybody put Jacqueline Guillen in everything. She never disappoints. So good.
She did not disappoint. I had mentioned to you when I was boo-hooing that the first or second line that she had in the play just resonated so much with me to my core, about how she knew that she was here for more. She was here for something bigger, something greater. And that line just resonated with me so much. And one of the reasons why I was just like, man, this is amazing as a 40-year-old woman that I am, to see a Latino story being told in Houston, Texas, at the Alley Theater, and to have it speak to me in such a way. It was just phenomenal, because you know, some of y'all know a little bit of my background that I've shared, that I have gone to the theater before as a child, very grateful, privileged and grateful to do so, but I never saw these Latino stories, and I never saw Latinas as the lead. And not just that, but saying such like things that were just speaking to me, speaking to my soul. So I was just like, wow, that was just amazing to just be there. So again, like I said, y'all have to June 4th. I highly recommend y'all go see this. We have to support each other. We have to let people know what's going on, especially our writers, especially the actors that are out there that are doing this great work, because if we don't, you know, we will continue to get sidelined, and we don't want that to happen. And so that's why I'm here with Let's Vamonos. I want to make sure there's a safe space for us to be able to talk about these things, and also to just be encouraged and inspired and motivated to say, I'm going to go see that, because, you know, maybe that's not something I thought I was in the Houston area. You know, we have the sports, we have the concerts, we have all those things, but the theater life is definitely something that I highly recommend for people to learn about and enjoy. So as far as theater life for yourself, was it something you always dreamed to be a part of?
Yes, actually. Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I was very, very lucky and fortunate to have a family that encouraged a life in the arts. My dad is a photographer. My mother is a costume designer. My
Awesome.
sister is a musician and a fine artist, and she does collages. And I think my brother is the only one. He's in the Navy. Happy Memorial Day, Max, if you're watching. Um,
Oh, oh, your
yes,
brother's name's Max.
yeah.
My son is name's Max.
Oh my
Maximiliano, actually.
God. Yeah, my brother's Maximilian. So yes,
That's so cool.
strong Mexican name.
Yes,
But
yes.
but yes. Well, and even when Max was younger, he did an amazing production of Annie that people still talk about, where he had no lines. He was the butler, but like at the end of Act One, he like was like and pulled the lights out of the Christmas tree, so the whole thing went dark. And people were like, "He's so good." So yes, I have family in the arts. It was
Oh,
very
that's
much
funny.
encouraged. Yeah, my grandparents would take me to see plays and dance. And then I had a lot of energy as a child. I would always like Christmas and Thanksgiving, like hold my family hostage in the living room, and I was like, I'm gonna reenact The Lion King or like whatever Disney movie was out, and I would play all the parts and direct it.
I
You
could
know,
totally relate to that. I used to do that to my mom. Side note, some people might know this. Used to sing. I didn't used to sing. I am a singer. I have sung in the past. And I used to hold my family hostage and sing and practice. So yes,
yes,
I can totally relate.
they are your first audience. But they would try to go to the bathroom, and I would like be sit down. It's not done. Um,
Oh,
but
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, so I think like having that support, and I was always writing when I was a kid. I would write like little short stories or little poems, and and I thought I was going to be an actor for a long time. I actually moved to New York for college, thinking that I was going to do musical theater because that's what I trained in from the time I was like 8 until I was 18. I did like, weekly acting, dance, and voice lessons, in addition to doing productions at school and productions outside of school. And then when I got to college, I just pivoted to playwriting. There was just something about building the world, as opposed to being, the second to last step. We always say the audience is the last step in the birth of a play, but the actors come in and they bring the words to life. And for some reason, I was just like, I really want to be the person that makes the world and makes the decisions.
Hmm.
Not to say that actors don't get to make their own creative decisions with the piece, but I was like, I want to do the building blocks.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've been there sort of ever since. It's a wonderful life. It is a frustrating life sometimes, I won't lie.
Right.
But I think most creative endeavors are sort of frustrating, from time to time, but it is very fulfilling. Like I always tell people, it's really frustrating when you don't have a production or anything sort of lined up, but I don't know. So I hadn't had anything for a few years. And then all of a sudden, this 6.5 weeks I spent in Houston were so magical. And I was like, oh, it's like the other years didn't even matter.
Yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
all that hard work that we always have to go through, right? To kind of get the just desserts, to get the things that we want the most. And also you had mentioned about, sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it's hard. And I know for me, I feel the same way. And sometimes I'm like, but at the same time, I do feel like if it's not hard, then I wouldn't be doing it, right? Because
Hmm.
we don't want to do we all done, for me specifically, I've done the 9 to 5, I've done other things, and I've literally have had my hands in all kinds of stuff. And so this has been the most challenging of my journey. So I can only imagine for you as well. You're as a creative and as a writer, it only gets more challenging, right?
Oh, definitely. And especially like, the more you ascend in your career, it's like,
Hmm.
what are you going to write after this? Or what's the next story you have to tell? What's the next job you want to take? as you get older and, you start managing like your career and your family and
Yeah.
your home life. And I think a lot after pandemic, a lot of people are really focusing on like their physical health and their mental health, because grind culture sort of eliminates the humanity out of
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people are considering those things. And I know for me personally, I'm spending a lot of time now thinking like, what is going to make me the most happy? What's going to be the most fulfilling? And then also like leave room for me to just live my life. I think that starving artist narrative is like complete BS, like you shouldn't have to like kill yourself for your art. It's,
Yeah. No, I agree. I really promote here on Let's Vamonos as well, channeling that inner child, because that inner child is what's so important as well. I know for me, that's some of my happiest memories as a child. Like you said, playing and pretending and doing your practices and stuff. So we have to kind of sometimes go back to that, right? What makes us happy? What is going, and it can be something so small. Like you don't have to literally change your whole life, but you can just entertain that inner child for, a weekend or a day or a moment, but yeah, I really appreciate that because I think I think as Latinos too, I think we feel like we always have to struggle, right? Like we always have to live in some sense of like state of like stress and state of like, just like always, trying to climb to some extent. And that's not always good for our mental health as well. It can definitely be a burden, or it can become a burden. So I love the fact that you're also super, you're an advocate, excuse me, an advocate for the writer strike currently right now. So, tell us a little bit about that and how can we support and how can we, uplift those voices of the writers?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking about that. So my day job is I write for Law and Order SVU, although not presently because the entire industry is on strike, or
Right.
I should say the Writers Guild is on strike.
Yeah.
SAG is in negotiations currently, or they're going to be in negotiations come June 30th.
Okay.
For a potential strike, and Directors Guild of America, their contracts are expiring also on June 30th. So there might be strikes, on the way, possibly, depending on how their negotiations go. But for the writers, yes, I think the biggest thing to know there, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of our stances, or how should I say, not stance, but the reason we're striking is mainly for streaming and residuals. There are billionaire corporations like Netflix, HBO, Amazon, all these networks and studios that we, NBC, CBS, ABC, we all create content for them. Which I know sounds really like, I hate to say content, but that's kind of what it is. Like we create stories for them that people then consume at home and enjoy. And, our writers are not being paid fairly what they deserve for creating that compensation. The corporations are making much more off of our labor, which I think a lot of other labor unions can relate to. It could be Ironworks or IATSE or the department store unions. Pretty much any group of workers that wants to unionize is probably familiar with this. You're working really hard and the people above you are getting richer and richer and not willing to share the wealth, so to speak. So in the last 10 years, the writers' minimums, which was like what the minimum basic that we could be paid per an agreement. We used to, make a little bit more than that. And now about 50% of writers working under this contract that we're currently, fighting against, we make the minimum. And that can be showrunners, that can be, producer level writers, mid-level writers, and early career writers. So we're doing a lot of the striking now because we're at an inflection point, especially with the dawn of AI. right now. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of corporations are looking to AI to not just for the Writers Guild, but, you know, across the board to
Right.
use it to limit labor. You know, it's a way to cut out labor. You have a machine create the content that you need, or a machine do an assembly line for you, as opposed to having people work.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely going to be a learning curve, because I'm learning right now about AI myself, and so I think, you know, like anything, humans are going to be the most what is it, the tool that we're still going to need. Humans are still going to be the best tool to some extent. Yes, AI is definitely interesting and what is it, helpful. But at the same time, I think humans are the best tool. You can't 86 us out, you know, to some extent.
Yeah, we keep saying, you know, like, you know, we have our lived experiences. A computer doesn't have that. When you play around with Chat GPT, you give it the data it needs to create something. But you know, a core memory that you have might be the seed of a story that then, you know, becomes, I don't know, Succession or something, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I would say, like, if anybody has any, you know, interest in learning what the strike is about, I highly encourage looking at the Writers Guild of America, West or East. We have web pages that have information on there. A lot of a lot of information on Instagram. If you follow like WGA Strike or things like that, that's content that's generated with like little you know, little graphics that will give you like the basics of what we're fighting for. And then, you know, just talking to writers like you're doing now, you know, talk about it in the streets. I know, like in Houston, there's probably not a ton of writers, you know, writing for television, but if you know somebody, definitely start asking questions. And other ways to support, you know, if you're in New York or Los Angeles, you know, feel free to join us on a picket line. We always are looking for supporters to walk around with us. It's a ton of fun, which I know sounds really strange because it's like, you know, we're like protesting, but it is a lot of fun. We do like dance parties on the line. We do have fun chants, and it just feels like good energy, you know, like banding together for a common cause, which is making sure that writers, artists can live off of their art and have, send their children to private school if they want, or get a house for themselves or their parents, you know, just being able to live the American dream, right? That's the promise of it. And then there's also the Entertainment Fund. That is an organization that you can donate to that will provide emergency financial assistance to any applicant that is affected by the strike, that's looking for financial assistance, and that can be to help them pay their rent, their medical bills, get groceries, things like that. There are plenty of resources. Yeah. And if anyone who's listening to the live has any questions about that or wants links on that, definitely let me know. You can DM me on Instagram or Twitter, and I'd be happy to direct you to some resources. Everything is like not handy now for me, which I probably should have done, but
no worries. I'm glad you're sharing this information. And one of the things that you said, I think it also goes back to, like, you know, this 10 years ago, when 10 years ago, y'all are still kind of going through some of these struggles, and you're doing getting the base pay right now. You know, in another 10 years, y'all don't want to be back in the same scenario, you know? So this is great for future writers, right? For people that are young, that are starting in their careers, they want to be writers. They don't want to give up on their dreams and think, oh, I'm not going to be able to survive because I'm not going to get paid what I'm due. And at the end of the day, y'all are the ones that are creating the stories. Y'all are the ones that are creating the entertainment for us to some extent. And so we have to be appreciative of that, at least, you know? So I'm all for supporting you, and I really appreciate you just being an advocate, especially as a Latina as well. We have to be, you know, it's one thing that we have, you know, being a Latina, being a minority, but also, you know, being in a field where there is still a lot of underrepresentation as well.
Yes.
So it's great to hear your voice, and I'm so glad that you're able to share it here and talk about it and have that conversation, because I know there's some people that are not aware, or they've heard about it, but they're not really sure what's it about. So it's great that you're sharing that knowledge with us here, because we need to know more so we can be able to support y'all. Like you said, even if it's just going to the picket line.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, we've had some wonderful people bring like coffee or donuts or water. You know, I think somebody in LA brought sunscreen, I saw.
Oh.
So there are ways to support that aren't necessarily, you know, like you can bring your physical body, or you can bring food. If you have a Costco membership, you know, bring that water. I think it's great. I think it's great. But, you know, and I think I'm glad that you said, I'm glad that you mentioned like the future writers, because that's really, we are striking for ourselves, but like any labor union, like any action that you take is going to directly benefit the people coming after you. Mm-hmm. And so the next generation of writers, and a lot of those writers are early career writers who are having trouble ascending, you know, because television writing has its own, like, you know, ladder structure, you know, that you work, your levels that you work up. And a lot of, you know, women and a lot of writers of color, they get stuck at the lower level, and we don't want that for them anymore. We want people to break in. We want people to ascend, so that actually we have a more diverse writing staff of all levels. And then when you get to the showrunner level, or if you want to create something, like, that is possible for you. I truly believe in that. So that's one of the reasons that I'm like very much for this strike, is it's not just about getting paid like what we're owed, but it's also about the future of our industry. I don't want it to look super homogenized. I want more stories. You know, I was telling somebody the other day that I think the first time I saw like myself reflected on television was like when I watched Jane the Virgin, which was just a couple years ago.
Yes,
you know, yes. Where I was like, there's somebody that looks like me on television. In like a major role.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I remember when that show first came out. It was with Gina Rodriguez, is that her name, the actress? Yeah. She I felt the exact same way, and even my sister was like, "Oh my God, this is so awesome," right? My sister's much older than me, but she never even saw those representations, right? You know, and the movies that did have Latinas in them, or TV shows, were usually not the best representation of a Latin person, or, you know, it was kind of like, you know, I couldn't see myself as a fourth generation Mexican American who's lived in Houston, Texas all her life. You know, it's hard to come by when you see such stereotypical roles out there. It's hard to relate. And also when I know I've seen so many varieties of characters of people in other shows that are predominantly white, or even black African American shows as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm really just awesome to continue to support you in your journey, because I know you're going to do amazing, great things. You already are doing amazing, great things. And I want to be able to continue to support people like you, and also people that are up and coming as well. I want to be able to do that as well. So I just, in the doing so, how can we support you? Where can we follow you on your social media? Like, let us know.
Yeah, my social media is at Monet Simone. I'm mostly active on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best way to kind of follow me. That's my public profile. I do have an Instagram, but it's mostly for my family and my friends. Like, it's not public.
Right.
But yes, Twitter, I'm all about it. Find me there. And my DMs are open, as they say. Yes.
I love that. One quick last question before we go. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I know it is Memorial Day, so I really appreciate those that are on here watching and joining us. Or if y'all have any questions, I do see some people still on here on Instagram. Drop a question down below and we can get to it. But being here in Houston, what was that like? You know, like I said,
Humid,
Yes.
frizzy.
Yes, yes. That was story of my life. That's what it sounds like.
No, Houston is wonderful. I had lots of, I'm a big foodie, so I had lots of amazing culinary experiences while I was here. I mean, I was mostly in rehearsals, so
Right.
I didn't get to see too much, but, I was here last year at the Ali Al Noon Festival doing a workshop of this play before it made it to production. So between my time on both trips, I got to go to museums. I love them. Is it the Menil? Is that how you say it? The
Oh,
Menil?
yes, the
Yeah,
manure.
it's
Yes,
gorgeous.
yes,
Gorgeous. Gorgeous. People should go to that too. Just
yes,
like you want to go to the theater, go to museums. And in
yes.
Houston, they're free, which is amazing to me because in New York, you got to pay for museums. But I loved how I could just walk from collection to collection. I thought that was fantastic. Y'all have beautiful parks here. Yeah, it's so fun. Next time I come back, I'm going to go to NASA. I think
Ah,
I
yeah.
didn't get to do that, but I've always wanted to go. So it's another reason to come back.
Yes, 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 for sure. I agree with the museums. That was something I grew up as a kid as well, going to the museums. I think I actually went to the Manil when I was like 9 for a field trip. A
Oh,
field trip.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like they don't do that now. They
Oh
don't
my
do
gosh. No,
they,
everybody needs to go. The AC is blasting. It is delicious in there
yes,
and it's
yes.
free.
Yes.
Gotta go. Take advantage.
That for sure, for sure. Well, again, I'm just so inspired by you, and I just really appreciate you joining me and giving me some of your time because I know how valuable that is, and I just appreciate you being able to talk about what you're doing. And again, if y'all haven't seen the wonderful play, Torera, that is at the Alley Theater till June 4th, please go do so. Please support our wonderful actors that are out there right now. I mean, this is a play like no other. The imagery, the cultural aspect, the all of the layers, the dynamics of the play was just something I wasn't expecting. And I'm being very broad because I want y'all to go see it, right? I don't want to tell y'all exactly what happens, but there's just so many layers, and I was just so inspired and just proud, just so proud to be able to say that a fellow Latina was a part of this, and not just one, but many, but many.
Yes, my entire cast is Latino, and they are working hard. Majority of my designers are from Mexico, and if they're not from Mexico, they're either another person of color or they're LGBTQIA plus. My director Tatiana Pandiani and I were very intentional about who we were creating this piece for and who we were creating it with. And I do think that's reflected in the design. It's reflected in the people who are embodying these characters. My actors are so beautiful. The designers are so beautiful. I'm just super proud of this work. There's only a handful of performances left for this week, and I'd love to pack the house. So please, please, please come. And I know, for theater, especially for for Latinos and other folks of color, I think a lot of times theater can feel very intimidating. Like it's not a very welcoming, place. It can feel elitist, sometimes, or foreign to us. But you are welcome in the theater. We are waiting for you. This is a place where you belong. It is a place where you can see yourself reflected. And this is my offer to anyone out there. If you want to see the show and cost is a barrier to entry, please, please, please direct message me. We will find a way for you to get to the show. I would hate for someone to miss out on this because of cost.
Yeah, for sure.
So absolutely reach out if you are that person.
Yeah, and that's awesome of you to do so, because I think that's a lot of things that people tend to say, oh well, I can't afford that right now, or or like you said, they don't feel like it's something that they're welcomed to be in that space, right? They're so not accustomed, and they feel very out of place. But you are definitely welcomed. The wonderful Alley Theater people there are also very helpful. They tell you exactly all the information that you need to know to kind of navigate and also prepare yourself for what you're getting into, right? Because there's no breaks. There's no cell phones. There is no all these things. So it's an experience. And I think that's something that we are all about these days, is experiencing things and being in places that are providing experiences as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Alley Theater is definitely one of those places to do so. Just in a different format. So again, thank you so much, Monet. I really appreciate your time. Thank you all so much for those that are on here. Oh, someone did ask a question. What is the cost of the show? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. Do you know?
There are different price points. I think I think the highest cost is 70 something, but that there are cheaper tickets than that out there. Right. I don't know off the top of my head. But I know that there are affordable tickets. And as I said, if there is, a cost, a barrier to entry because of cost, please talk to me. And we will figure it out.
Yes. And also I would like to mention as well, for me, I feel like it's also a theater where wherever you sit, you're going to get a good seat. You're going to get a good view and a good seat. So it's definitely, I don't know exactly what the pricing was for my seat per se, but I do know that I was in a great seat. And I really was like, okay, this is, awesome, because people sometimes don't want to pay the extra to say, oh, they're going to sit up close up front. You don't have to sit in the front to enjoy this show. You can sit up in the higher levels, and you'll still feel like you're right there because of the way the Alley Theater is kind of organized, and it's very something super different. So thank you so much. That was my hairdresser, Emily. She asked the question. I'm gonna get her to go. I'm gonna get her to go.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes.
It's definitely less expensive than that. I know that when I was looking for a ticket, and it might have been that expensive because it was opening night.
Yeah.
I would just happen to click on a button, and I saw that was the price that was available. But there are definitely more affordable seats than that. And as you were saying, there's not a bad seat in the house. It's a very intimate theater. It's less than 300 people capacity, and it's staged in the round. So truly not a bad seat in the house.
Yeah, for sure. Well, any last words as far as any consejos for our guests out there that are watching, specifically for Latinas that are out there maybe starting their writing journey, or just their journey in general, their creative journey? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, I think we're all creative people, right? So I think broadening our definition of what creativity is, you could be creative in the kitchen. You can be a theater artist. You could be, a producer of events at your corporate job, right? You're somebody that's on a welcoming committee there, or you plan lunches. We are all creative in our own ways. I think the biggest thing as Latinos is just believing in ourselves, because nobody else will. It starts with you, and that radiates outward. Believe in yourself. That's why I think what Let's Vamonos is doing is so important, right? It's all about supporting each other, because I truly believe that now's the time that we all collectively rise up together. It's no longer there's only room for one person, or we step on another person to advance. We are all stronger when we go together.
Yes, I definitely agree. And so anybody out there that's watching, I really appreciate y'all's support as well. Like I always tell everybody, thank y'all so much for the love